ambivalence, and obviously this dovetails into from what we've already been talking about. Um, Ezra, if you want to kind of keep going and talk about that pull and how you view that pull between sort of success and and blackness and feeling like that these two things sometimes have to be sort of separate, mutually exclusive.
What drives an insecure dude? Foreign cars are driving a mini coupe. Mini coupe. Pretty ladies all over the city. Let me adjust the body. No, let me adjust the body. We selling out. Sex drives for the dudes' hormones. Hey, love don't mean the same no more. We used to be a miracle. Now it's something unbearable. Coming from the umbilical life, giving us cynical. And I don't wanna die right now. I just
Ezra,
wanna live my life.
if you
Live
want
my
to
life. And all
kind
I see
of
is hell right
keep
now.
going and talk about that pull and how you view that pull between sort of success and and blackness and feeling like that these two things sometimes have to be sort of separate, mutually exclusive.
I think it's difficult, man. I think this is a good subject to bring up tonight because I think in some ways, and whenever we swing, um, I guess, positions, whatever, we're dealing with our own personal bias and prejudice, right? And so how we hide is in our silence. So when those subjects come up, we're just quiet, which to me is another behavior response to who you really are, what's in your heart. If every time this subject on the table that you become silent, you expose yourself. And I think for us, right now, why I'm enraged is, okay, again, it's the same people that's coming to address it. We see Benjamin Crump again. All right, he's up front. They're going to put Al Sharpton up again. He's up front. And I'm not reflecting, I'm just trying to make sure we see how it works. And so for those who keep seeing the same pattern and the same results, it leaves in the same place. I don't know how to feel. I'm pulled between how I feel on issues because I know how I should see it, but I know how I feel. I'm gonna pass the buck on because I would like definitely hear some of the people insight on this because it is a battle. Because we got to find a center place of where I'm comfortable with, where I'm being true to myself at. And sometimes you got to admit if you sold yourself out, if you're on the wrong side of history.
We're talking about black ambivalence, and um, you know, I'll speak for myself when I say that um, having some, achieving some milestones, there sometimes there feels like there may be sort of a gap between sort of where I was and sort of where I am, and trying to refamiliarize myself with sort of some of the more the more basic needs of some of our people, right? You can like go to a cousin house
Mm-hmm.
and you may, I'll give you a story. So years ago, when I worked at the Boys and Girls Club, we would serve breakfast and we would do some dinner a couple times couple times a week in the evenings. And so there was a kid there who was just going to town, and I was, in my sarcasticness, I was trying to give him a hard time, and I said, "Boy, what's wrong with you? You are like, have you not eaten all day?" And he was like, "No," and did not sense any sarcasm and made me feel about this big because he hadn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so, um, you take some certain things for granted. And then if a kid steals something from a store or if they are doing some things, some participating in some illegal activities, there may be a, a a feeling to sort of looking down on them,
Hmm.
and you have to understand that they may not be getting good grades in school, right? And maybe it's not because of any lack of intelligence, but because they don't have the essentials at home.
Hmm.
And sometimes when you start to ascend some and see some success, you don't you lose touch. And ain't none of us millionaires on this call. So imagine some of those folks that are really seeing a lot of money, how disconnected they may feel, and that's where that pull happens. But it starts way before that. It starts much at a much lower income rate, and but that's where those seeds start to get planted. Quinn, I said all that to say, like, can you identify with some of those feelings, and like what are your thoughts on folks that may identify or feel have that ambivalence? um they may be living it right now.
Yeah, sure. I definitely can speak to that. And I did hear you guys talking about, some of the part about the Black conservativists and conservatism. And, it's right. Look, it's something we all have to recognize is that um, our experiences in being Black are different for all of us. I mean, just amongst the group, we've all had different experiences, and we all come from the same community, but we have shared experiences and we have different experiences. And so I too have, with the situation with the schools being virtual right now, and the work that my wife does, I recognize that like there were a lot of folks who were being fed by schools, so much so to the point to where the school systems and the state of Michigan said, "Hey, we got you. We're going to give you guys an EBT card," because we recognize that some folks were only getting 2 square meals a day provided by the school, and it was a real concern. Like hunger is a real concern in the United States. I mean, there's a lot of other serious health conditions that are a real concern in the United States that we feel like we've kind of gotten past as a whole. But the reality is there are folks who depend on those things. So you're right. When you don't live it and you're not in it, you don't see it as well. And I've seen it myself where you have to take that step back to recognize what's going on around you and where you are in association where other people are. And so, when I hear you guys talking about this in the context of dealing with conservativists and being a conservative and how it impacts the Black community, just like I think we're all along the spectrum and in agreements in similar places, and in some places we're further apart. There are Black conservatives who, to the point you guys speak to, um, they see different parts. They see both the Democratic and Republican Party as having racist parts to them, and they choose to deal with the racist parts of the Republican Party. Now, I'm not going to speak to why because that's not me, so I won't speak for other people. But I will say, to recognize that that's where they stand and that's the road they chose. Now, their Black experience was different than mine. What boggles my mind, and this is I don't have the data to support it, but I believe you'll find a lot of the Black conservatives are more in the southern states, which to me is ironic because I would think they would be the complete opposite. But again, I don't know the story behind that. But my point in saying this is that there are many experiences, and so I think the key though is trying to find the human element for all of us. Like I agree 100% with what you guys are saying, and so the reason why I say try and find a human element is because to reach those people, we have to see, we have to find that core for them. Otherwise, it's just going to be an insanity loop of back and forth. And so as easy as it is for us to see, like the example of the kids who aren't get the meals at home, for some of those folks, the core values in their arguments, we're going to have to try and find what those core arguments are as to why they can recognize racist policies and side with policies, and somehow some of them feel okay with it in a genuine way, not in a I'm a sellout type of way, or yeah, I don't care about anybody type of way. But they, for example, the policy I always go to is I've known of Black folks who voted conservatively because they're pro-life, and they're like, it's just against my morals. I can't, no, nothing else matters to me but being pro-life. Now I would say, how are you gonna be pro-life for babies, but you're not pro-life after they come out of the womb? Like, I'm pro-life for their whole life, like from the cradle to the grave. So, but that's just my stance. And so getting to those core issues is really the key of it. Like, again, just to take it back to the kid who's not eating. That's why they're eating like that. That's why, they might be stealing something. That's why, I had to talk to my kids. This is something I always talk to my kids about. I was like, if you see a bully, friend that bully, because they probably got something going on at home. And, don't always think you gotta, I do teach them to swing. I got daughters, I still got to teach them to swing though. But talk to that bully. I bet you they haven't had people who really talk to them to get to know what's making them do what they do. That's why they keep picking on kids. That's why they keep acting out, because they're not getting something that they need. And so those kind of conversations just need to be had. The conversations we need to talk.
Staten, please jump in.
If I could piggyback off of that, Wesley, kick me off the call if I get too far in your wheelhouse. But I just want to just ease just a little bit. I'm just going to stick a toe in your wheelhouse, and like I said, just kick me off if I'm doing too much. But in terms of our sense of belonging, in terms of trauma, because individuals want to feel a sense of belonging. When it comes to trauma, you can't feel like you belong somewhere if it's somewhere that you've been traumatized, unless you deal with that. Going back to what Wesley was saying, in terms of, because the wound of the trauma of Black people hasn't been dealt with, then they never feel a sense of comfort. So I'm gonna step out of your wheelhouse there, Wes, and just that's all. I'm gonna move out of that and move into. So if Black people don't feel comfortable anywhere, then it further it further creates this tension between them and America, and it goes even beyond that, right? I mean, because we're not going to get into it today, but right, there's an anti-Blackness globally, but we ain't getting into that today.
We need to.
I'm not talking.
We need to, because it's context.
I'm not talking about.
You need to.
America. There's an anti-Blackness globally, but just staying to my point is that, so if Black people do not feel like they have a sense of belonging, right, then how can they be comfortable? How can they be at a place where they're okay? So if I'm in the South and the people around me say, the way that you can belong is to be a part of the Republican Party. That's how you can belong. That's how you can feel. So yeah, you like, it would be ridiculous. Like, why would that be that way in the South? Because oftentimes we as Black people are looking to overcome our trauma by, as Dion said, through assimilation or looking for a place to belong, even if that place sometimes does not legitimately care about us. We are looking. My old man used to have a saying that a child, that hungry child that you was talking about, Bax, right? They would take a soggy potato chip over no potato chip. I would rather have something over absolutely nothing. And so I think when we look at our Black people, there are so many different venues in which they feel like they don't belong. I'm not the sharpest dresser, but there was a particular day I had on a nice blazer when I went to work one day. I was working in the city at that time, and one of the individuals, I won't say the organization, but one of the individuals that I work with said, "Man, you know what, man, you looking kind of good out here, man, with that blazer on. You looking kind of sweet." I say, "Man, thanks, man. I appreciate that, man." He said, "Man, you the type of guy I'd rob." But back when I was out in the street, though, when I was out in the street, you the type of guy I'd rob, man. I seen you in that. I say, "Hold on, man." So here, but here's the dynamic. Here's the dynamic is that I wore the exact same blazer, right? Blue jeans, blazer. button-up shirt. That's kind of my look. Okay, that's kind of what I rock with. I wore it to a different organization. The previous organization was predominantly black. This organization was predominantly white. And I walked in that organization, and they were like befuddled because they wear like jeans. I'm not talking about with the cool holes in them, right? I'm talking about where your Wrangler jeans, where your wallet done wore a hole in the back of it, right? So that's what they wearing, as opposed to the professional attire. Like you couldn't walk in that in the previous black organization, like you. So what I'm saying is, I wore my outfit, let alone Mark. My outfit couldn't even exist in the same space, right? There were completely different perspectives of even what I had on. And so I think we feel that very real tension in that, man, if my outfit don't fit the same way in two different spaces, then surely I don't, right? We could talk about code switching, how I feel like I have to talk different depending on who I'm around.
Absolutely.
We could talk about the fact that I have to dress different sometimes depending on who I'm around. And so if it's in terms of the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, then I may feel like, you know what, I don't belong in either one of those places. I can't say specifically where everybody on this call lives at, but we probably all live in suburban areas, and even in the suburbs. You go back to the city, and you got people that may say you a sellout. You know what I'm saying? You living in the suburbs? What you living out there for? And then you in the suburb, they like, oh well, I definitely wouldn't go back to the city, right? We just trying to show that we can make it. We trying to show that we can progress. We talking black people. We just talking black people. And so there is this very real tension that exists, that the space that we exist in, that's very difficult. And it creates this sense of rage. It creates this sense of frustration because you don't belong anywhere. Black America feels like sometimes they don't want you. And then especially as when I say a conservative, I mean in the literal term, and that you're conservative on many issues. And so then you got blacks that feel like they don't necessarily want to deal with you because you're conservative on certain issues, as if you've abandoned the party. I'm not talking about conservative in the gist of what we've been talking about tonight, but there is the very real tension. And Dr. King said he was interviewed, and he was on a bus ride, and he's coming back from winning this speech in high school, and he was extremely angry because they told him to get up from his seat, and then his teacher said he wanted to stay. He was like, man, I'm about to sit here, right? This is about to be bus boycott number one, but his teacher told him to get up. He got up, and he said he had never been more angry. Years later, when he was interviewed, over decades later, 20 years later, when he was interviewed, he said, still, that's the angriest I had been. Now look at all this man had been through still. But he said, I had to find somewhere to place that anger, because if you don't find somewhere to place that anger, it will destroy you. It will kill you. And so I think that, yes, we may be angry about this ambivalent world that we exist in and these tensions that we exist in, but I think we have to be the example of what it looks like. What Pastor Tillman say, look, no matter what, it don't matter what happened here, I got to be the one to stay cool. It don't matter what happened to my community, I got to be the one to be level-headed. Because guess what? If I lose my cool, there are people watching me, and I guarantee you they will follow me in losing my cool. Now we got a real problem on our hands. So I've said a lot, but hopefully it made sense in what I was saying.
I wanna end it. I wanna go to Wes and then Tillman, and I want Dion to finish up. You talk about belonging and sometimes not having that sense. It reminds me of a story that I read about Sammy Davis Jr. Okay, the Rat Pack played a big part in campaigning for JFK. Okay, they did a lot of campaigning for JFK, and Sinatra and Dean Martin. Sammy Davis Jr. obviously is a huge part of that. He was also happened to be married to a white woman at the time. And when JFK was elected, Sammy Davis Jr. was not invited. Actually, he was not invited. He was told he couldn't go to the inauguration party at the White House. Okay, this man then went and represented and stomped for JFK, but the fact that he had a white wife, they didn't want to upset anyone, right? So I'm sure he was hurt by that. All of his friends, everyone else is at this party he can't go to, right? So years later, when Nixon was in office, the first time he had spent time in the White House was with Nixon. Now all of a sudden he's drawn closer to Nixon, and then black people call him a sellout, right? Because he's representing those guys. When in his mind, those were the guys that showed him love, right? So there's always this pull, because I don't know if we fit perfectly in either space, and I don't know if we're accepted completely in either space. But those small gestures may be the difference between who we ride for and who we represent, right? And sometimes it's on a large scale, like an entertainer, and sometimes it's on a small scale, and we may not even be able to pinpoint that moment where we decided we were going to be on one side or the other.
Yeah, and can I just add to that? I know Ezra and Dion are up, but I just wanted to really add to that point, because I think as we're going on in time, and I think in some ways as we do progress, it becomes a little bit more ambiguous, because you do have now, for example, more than ever, you have white families who adopt Black kids, and you have multicultural church communities, and you have these situations where in some ways there is more diversity and there is more opportunity for people to not be so siloed in a sense. And so it creates for them a little bit more comfort in feeling that way, to your point with Sammy Davis Jr. So, because I know some folks who have adopted Black kids, and, you know, I've thought about, like, you know, it's going to be interesting for both of you, because it's going to be interesting to you because you're going to try and raise this kid as like a kid, as somebody you love and somebody you will fight for and die for. And at the same time, you know that they're going to have challenges, or if you don't know, you're going to recognize real quick that they're going to be seen differently. And so for that kid to grow up in that white Christian conservative family is an entirely different dynamic for all of them, because, you know, the white Christian conservative family is going to try and treat that kid like a normal kid, which they should. But at the same time, they're also going to have to reconcile how the world sees that kid as different, not just for being adopted, but more so for being Black. And those type of dynamics are happening more and more in different scenarios. And that's just a big one. And I wasn't talking about anyone specifically, but those are the dynamics we're dealing with now, where it's not so clear cut, where it's not so, oh, you know, you going to the White House with Nixon? Like, there's a little bit more ambiguity to it. And that's what, honestly, I think is making it more challenging for some. I know for others it's not.
Yeah. Staten, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, because I know there's an important point that you missed that you want to make sure you include.
I was gonna throw the oop to somebody else, and somebody else could have made it.
Go ahead.
I certainly just want to say that I think a part of our Christian faith is that even though we don't belong in so many different spaces, as an unapologetically Christian Black man, I am thankful that God allows me to feel accepted and like I belong with Him. That is in and of itself helps me to wake up in the morning.
Thank you. Tillman, please add to this.
A lot has been said. I really appreciate Mark, and I appreciate Quinn bringing out some very valid points. And it's so complex, I can't jump on all of it, but I want to make sure I put some key pieces in there. There's no ambiguity about being Black. That's the space we're in right now. What we just saw happen on this charge on yesterday is what it is. It's a white justice system. It's a Black justice system. If you're a Black man, you're a Black woman. If you're Black, it doesn't apply to you. You rush the door. I'm supposed to have an amendment and right for me to protect my house. I shoot. You lock me up. You killed my fiance. She's dead, right? I go to jail. No charges, no statements. You know, we twist about justifying why it happened or not. Well, if you was white, it would never be a conversation. This hypocrisy about fitting is that we have the conversation with people who would try to justify the means of what the court said because the court know the law, but you know right from wrong. And you know, if it was your brother or your father, you'd be out there, hell no, we won't go. You'll be out there all the way. And if you were raising Black children or married to a person or race in your own home, the issue we're talking about now with this ambivalence is, okay, you can feel that passion for that person in your home, but do you have it for the community, for their cousin, for their family, for their co-workers? You're silent then, or you're absent. But if you switch the color and you're Italian or you're Jew, you know, you align strongly with your opinions and views with that. So I think that if we're gonna be truthful about being American, we know it's Black and everybody else. I told Trina, I said, we need to get a shirt, Black against everybody. Because in fact, what we are watching and seeing right now today is where we at. If you're Black, these things do not count for you if it's law or not, if it's written or not, if it's put in place or not. Why? Because whatever thing was put in place for Black people, that was amendments to strip the same structure for it to help you that override the point of being in the first place. Like right now, we're not saying anything about Bloomberg, who's paying for 34,000 some people that were ex-felons to have opportunity to vote, because we're told if you're a felon, you can vote. But now they're going to change the law after it was approved in Florida and give you fines to say you still can't vote. Well, what the hell are we doing here, man? I can or I can't. It changed when it gets to who? Whoever are marginalized, whoever's beneath us, whoever's anti-us. And so again, we're still talking about this Trumpism concept because he's speaking to a base that support this, that runs this country. And we're not talking percentile now. We're showing who we really are, because everyone who says they're with you obviously is not with you, because the vote is still going his way.
That's right.
Yeah, no, I want to piggyback on something. And I know we close to time, so I'll try to have my 3 closes, you know, bring it on home and pass it on to Dion, and he finishes up tonight. The uncertainty behind just human life. How? Again, ask yourself a question. How are we debating human life? How are we debating a person's color? How are we debating the rights because of a person's color, right? Because I'm Black, I can't do certain things. So as a people, as Black people, yes, we're being left to choose, having to choose which side we want, whether Republican, Democrat. None of them fit us at all. But yet, you know, we could be independent. What is that? Where's the money behind that? Does that really represent us? Mark was talking about the trauma, and if I were to go over into my field, you hit on the first core thing. It talks about trauma is it's called like the app matrix, right? And it deals with trauma. It says every human being have these 6 core yearning things. Every human being. Notice I didn't say every white person, every Black person. I said every human being. Number 1 is a feeling. Number 2 is coherence. Number 3 is orientation. Number 4 is belonging. Number 5 is self-directed. Number 6 is competency. Number 4 is belonging. Where do we belong in this nation, in this world? That's a question. Where do we belong? Then,
as the servant.
Right. Exactly. On our knees, you know, being told what to do while people stand on our backs. I'll end with this and throw it to Dion. There's also this concept that is called a dialectical dilemma. It comes from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy. And then in dialectical dilemma means that there are 2 truths, but yet they are opposing at the same time. So if I give you an example, my tooth hurt, but I hate the dentist. Both of those are true, but they both opposing at the same time. We got human life in the center, but we got Republicans on the right, we got Democrats on the left, but none of them are working towards the middle. We no longer have conversations anymore. Conversations are really trying to convert you to our side. You gotta pick a side, and that's why we are left in a state of uncertainty. We don't know where we belong. We know our story. You can't change my narrative. You can't tell me how to feel. But then when I'm feeling, all types of ways. Where do I send my kids to school? And if my son is in the program right now, and the other day I picked him up, and it was just on my heart. Literally, matter of fact, it just happened 2 days ago. I looked at him. I said, "You're the only black kid in there, aren't you?" He was like, "Yeah, Dad." And he just clueless. I'm like, and I feel some type of way about that. But at the same time, it's an opportunity for him, and I don't want him to miss it. But at the same time, I'm hurting because what happened to the boy that's running around on the street that don't have the same opportunity? Me and my wife can write the check for him to be in that program. But what about the other families that can't? Right? So how do we solve the dialectical dilemma? Well, it's called walking the middle path. That's a whole nother step. Basically, both ends have to move towards the middle. It's not until we put our eyes back on human life and value us as a people that we'll see change. I'm done.
And then bring us home.
I want to start by saying at no point in time are we suggesting that we want to control the party in which you vote. What we're talking about is how can you be conservative, strongly conservative on every issue without even critiquing the issues. That's just let that be known. I am not a Democrat. I am not a Republican. I'm a Black Christian man in the United States of America that wants to use my voting power to ensure human dignity and flourishing as much as I can. That's what I am. So I just want to get that out the way. When we deal with this ambivalence, we've discussed pretty much compartmentalized ambivalence. I'm talking about the folks who are ambivalent to their race in general. In general, that's the person who always has that whataboutism when you're speaking of a Black issue. Yeah, but what about Chicago? Yeah, but what about Black fatherhood? But what about single mothers? They fly red herrings, they build straw men, they use anecdotal fallacies where they use some of their own personal experiences and try to make it like we have to be monolithic, like, well, I haven't experienced that, so it just, those are the people we're addressing. Those are the people who are a problem. Those are the people that I receive the most pushback from. I texted you guys a while ago saying that a guy was trying to explain to me that we should be colorblind because in Christ we're one. And I said, well, in the parallel passage in Galatians, it says that we're neither male nor female. And since you're a conservative theologian, I'm pretty sure that you recognize that there are still men and women. The categories do not cease to exist. We're looking at an egalitarian view, equality, equity, right? So when we dig into having these discussions and you hear people only able to find their vocal cords to oppose, to bring in a what about, I want to show the other side a little bit. Let me get my Terry Crews on and say, well, this could turn into Black supremacy. Those are the people that we are addressing. I want to do a plug. I want to suggest that everybody who watches this and everybody on here, look up Justin Giboney and the AND campaign. It digs into a centrist view of how to critique both sides without doing this false equivalency thing, and you can still pick where you want to land, where you vote. They've been great. I've been learning a lot from them. We have to take a stance for the betterment and the flourishing of our community. That means that sometimes a conservative view on a particular issue might be best. Sometimes a more progressive view may be best. But if what Chris Rock say, if you make up your mind before you hear the issues, then you are an idiot. I'm pretty sure he probably used a more colorful word, but I'm gonna go with that. And I'm gonna get off topic real quick because I want to throw some out there to my brothers and sisters who are exercising their right for peaceful protests. And I want to give you something I got from Compassion and Conviction, the book that I'm reading, on how to do civic engagement. It says, one, focus on the decision maker. If the tactic does not impact the decision maker, at least at a secondary level, you will probably not move the decision maker to support your issue. Two, highlight your specific goal. Your tactics should highlight what you want and not distract from them. In order for that to happen, you have to have a specific goal, right? Three, make sure your team can actually pull it off. There's no benefit to your community cause to set out to do something that you would ultimately be unable to do. Before planning an action, make sure you can actually do it. Number four, your work must disturb the equilibrium. Protest and advocacy have to get noticed to be effective. This does not mean that your tactics should be obnoxious, violent, or inconsiderate. But if business as usual will continue once your action has ended, it is unlikely to spark the change you are trying to bring about. Be intentional with what you do. Be intentional with your vote. Be intentional with what you support. Be intentional on how you decide to protest. Be intentional. Have a specific goal and go out there and get it done. And to my brothers and sisters who happen to be Black and you happen to be a conservative, this is not a shot at you. Like I said at the beginning, we are talking about the people who are staunchly conservative on every issue and refuse to critique that side, because we know that the progressive and the liberal sides have their own issues as well. We are fully aware of that. But please take the time out to critique the issues, get into the nuances, get into the detail. Don't be ahistorical. Get into the actual history of what you're doing. Don't let them fool you with the whole Party of Lincoln thing. Lincoln got his head blown off, by the way. Let's not get into that. Let's be smarter than that. Thank y'all.
Yeah,
and can I just say,
go ahead.
Can we just make sure that we are looking at things on a micro level, not just a macro level? It's far, we got to look at these things on what's your local government doing? There's so much more that we can do on a local level to make sure that we are looking at these issues, not from a partisan perspective, but looking at them saying, as Dion said, what is it that to allow my vote to have the most power, because I'm voting for what is best for my community in this particular thing. Absolutely, the vote on the federal level is important, but I think it's far more important the work that we need to be doing on our local
level. Thank you to everyone. Quinn, right? Thank you for joining us. Reverend Mark Staten, Wesley Morgan, Pastor Ezra Tillman, Dion Carson. I am Baxter E. Hall. This has been another fantastic conversation, and I hope that people can get some takeaways from it. As we post this and share this with our groups of friends on the social media platforms, please, I encourage you guys to chime in, weigh in, give your thoughts. Let's continue this dialogue, because these are the types of things that are going to bring about the change that we all are trying to see. Thanks again to everyone for joining us tonight. Prayers to Breonna Taylor and her family, and everyone that is, um, you know, mourning for not only her passing but for the lack of accountability. Um, we will definitely be back soon to continue these conversations, and thank you again for joining us.